Good morning, everybody. We have Elizabeth Estes from Three Lakes Partners who's going to be starting off our session. Good morning, Elizabeth.
I know there's been a lot of questions and a lot of excitement about the challenge, and we're coming up to nearing the end of it. Today is the last day for the application, and as you can see behind me, I tried to be a little not subtle. The submissions need to be completed by November 8th. I'm going to tell you we have 70 submissions started, which is fantastic, and we have a few of them completed, which is great. But we're very excited by the response to this. And I'm really happy to have with me today two gentlemen who are super important in this entire initiative. One of those, Bill Vick, many of you may know if you've been involved in this space before. He is a patient advocate and one of the most passionate men I've ever met generally, but for this disease state. He is an IPF, a patient with IPF, and he is the head of PF Warriors in Dallas, Texas, and really is representing the voice of the patient today for any of you who might have questions for him. So Bill, welcome in from Dallas.
Thank you. Thank you.
And the other guy is Jaison Morgan, the CEO of Common Pool. Common Pool was our partner of choice for this contest from the very beginning because of the experience that Jaison has building these contests and creating these contests, and we're super happy. Jaison and I compete on who has the most frequent flyer miles in a year, and you can tell he's in a hotel today, and I think maybe you might have an edge on me, Jaison. Where are you today?
I'm in Tulsa, Oklahoma, giving a workshop on prizes for a big foundation here.
All right, well, I'm going to tee this up with you because I know a lot of people have questions. You know, we think we worked pretty hard with your team to create a website that tried to answer everything, but I'm sure that you're used to things not being able to be answered because there's always going to be questions you can't anticipate. Could you talk a little bit about the basics of this contest, both from the scoring rubric, how we're looking at it, the submissions, what we're trying to see? Can I just kind of throw it to you and let you take that away a little bit?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'm going to do a short demonstration of the website just to get some basic questions answered up front. But before I do that, I want to say that our approach to designing this program was really to deliver a very open, transparent, and fair user experience for anyone that had a great idea for improving quality of life for those suffering from IPF. There was a lot of work before we became involved. We have a lot of partners who actually helped queue this up. And so by the time we got to this, we were very humble and we decided, okay, how can we solve the problem or create an opportunity for people who maybe have a great idea, but who've never become kind of immersed in the IPF world? And so in order to ensure that, we built a website that allows anyone from anywhere to understand exactly what the requirements are from them, what are the implied costs for participating, exactly how they're going to be assessed, how those scores and comments are going to be calculated, and who is going to be submitting those scores and comments. We actually have a judge here today in Bill Vick. And so I want to now, Nuri, if you could pass control over to me, I'll do a screen share. Okay.
Hey, Jaison, and as you're doing that, can I ask a quick question?
Please.
This is a pattern and a process that you've done on major prizes. And can we talk really quickly about that? This is tried and true. This isn't something you came up with just for this contest. The concepts behind this have been very well vetted through major prizes.
Firm is commonpool.org. You can visit our website anytime. We run our company the way we run our competitions: open, transparent, fair, accountable. If you go to our website, you can see 15 case studies of other competitions we've run. Now, one of those offers $100 million. It's sponsored by the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation. It's called 100 and Change. You can go there and see exactly what we did for them. About a month and a half ago, we launched a prize for NASA to put new technology on the International Space Station. You'll see that we can either go very narrow and deep on the subject, or we can also go very broad and wide. I think for this first IPF Catalyst Challenge, what we're looking for is big ideas kind of at the wide lip of the innovation funnel. So we want you to be able to come here, categorically pick what your idea is, and then spell that out in a fairly sophisticated application. And we've learned a lot how these processes work, and we feel like we're in a good position here to invite the broadest range of thinking right now. We have a lot of other ideas for how we can build upon this program, and so look for more to come. I've just offered a screen share so that we're currently at the website. This is challenge.ipfcatalyst.com. And there's a few things that I want to note right off the bat. You'll see that in the upper right-hand corner, we've got 1 day to register, right? So tomorrow at 5 p.m. Central, anyone who is not registered needs to complete that process. It's a very simple process. It's a two-phase process where you enter very basic information about who you are, and then you have to click off on a few questions to explain how you heard about this and kind of who you are. Once you've done that, you enter kind of the back end of this website. And once you're in the back end, you can join discussion forums. You can start completing your application. This competition launched 12 weeks ago on August 1st. And over that 12 weeks, we've been able to solicit to attract probably 2 to 3 times the number of registrants that we thought or that we were aiming to enroll. And so we feel very strong about the registrant community. But what's more important, about 2 weeks and 1 day to go for people to complete their submissions, right? So the deadline is November 8th. It's again 5 p.m. Central Time. And so by November 8th, we want you not only put forth your best effort, but to have all your questions answered. So the best place to start is to come to the website, right? And to see that for the public, we've already identified exactly what the application includes. So if you go to the navigation and you land on the application page, you're going to be able to read through each of the 4 sections of this application. Now, I did some basic math this morning, and if you assume that about 250 words is a written page, a manuscript page, and you count up all the word caps, this is about a 12.5-page application. So it's not insignificant. And given that we're offering 3 prizes from a total pool of $1 million, we really need to know a lot about kind of what your proposal is. The winner of this competition, or one of the 3 winners, is going to receive a grant. And if you have any questions about what's required of you, should you win one of these cash prizes, you can go to our rules page. And from there, you can see the sample terms and conditions for the grant that you would receive if you're designated as a winner. But as you're considering that and you're looking at the application, it's not just about the 12.5 pages that you have to write, right? We want some basic information on your quick pitch. So you not only have to tell us what you're offering, you also have to include a video of 90 seconds, right? There's other things that are not about the page limit, like a project plan chart and a budget ledger. And there are various drop-down questions and prompts that you'll find in this application. Again, it's a sophisticated application from a sophisticated group of registrants. The next question we always get is kind of, okay, now I know what the burden is on me, what the implied costs are, but how am I going to be assessed? So here we've come to what we call our trait scoring rubric. This is the exact user interface that our judges are going to use to score and comment on your application. So each of the traits in this rubric have a label. In the case of this first one, it is meaningful. Then there are a series of questions. We call these the prompts, which are intended to clarify the definition of this label meaningful. And now you'll see that there's a 5-point Likert scale for each of these traits. And as you toggle back and forth, and as you scroll through these single integer ranges, you'll see that these pre-populated definitions appear. Now, this is really important for our user community. If you're aiming for a 4.6 or 5.0 on this trait, you can see exactly what we're expecting of you in order to realize that score. We've also included anchor words at the extreme ends of each scoring range so that you know kind of more and more about what we want. You'll see that there are these 4 traits. They're each equally weighted, but you'll notice patterns that will appear within these subscoring range definitions where we're emphasizing certain aspects of what we want. So once we've established kind of what you have to do and then how you're going to be scored, the next question we often get is, okay, but how do I know this is fair, right? One of our goals is to invite people who wouldn't participate in, say, a traditional RFP. Now, we've studied this a lot. I set up a lab at MIT in 2007 to study how prize competitions work. And one of the things we know is that if we're going to invite outsiders, people who don't normally participate in these kind of competitions, they need to know that they're going to be treated fairly. At the end of the day, this is a subjective process, and you're going to be assigned 5 judges from our list of identified judges on this website. And the reason we're offering 5 is because we have what we call our normalization protocol. So there's both a technical and a layman's description of why we normalize our judges' scores, which you can read through at any time. Now, what this really means is that if I'm applying, well, let's say Elizabeth is applying and Vick's applying. And Vick is assigned 5 judges who are hard graders. They only give, on a scale of 1 to 5, the most they'll give you is a 2. And Elizabeth is assigned 5 easy scores, people that consistently give 4s and 5s. We have a mathematical way of addressing this to make sure we're leveling the playing field, and we recalibrate each judge's scores based on 2 different measures of distribution, mean and standard distribution and standard deviation. And so this is available for you just so that you. So lastly, we will even identify who those judges are. Now, this is also important because if every judge on the panel was a chemist, you'd know we were looking for chemistry solutions. But even more important, you know through our normalization routine that you're going to get scores and comments to justify each of those judges' scores from 5 different judges. And often when we survey people that participate in these competitions, the feedback that they get from these judges will actually rank higher than the opportunity to win these cash awards. So we lay out what their credentials are. In this case, you can see exactly what Bill Vick's credentials are as an IPF warrior. You can also see any of our other judges who are a part of this process. And you'll notice that they're highly credentialed people. We've taken a lot of time to bring them through the
you work
process.
with us really hard to try to find, to your point, to try to find people who have varied backgrounds. We didn't just want IPF specialists. We wanted business people and entrepreneurs and engineers and people who have already had success in the space so that we could have a really great sense and kind of a well-rounded group of people. And you guys really pushed us hard to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a kind of a push and a pull here, right? We want you to come up with a solution that's meaningful, that's feasible, that's sustainable, but also one that's integrated. Listen, the healthcare space is a complicated world. And so we want you to be able to come to the table with a fresh idea, but we also want you to know what you're getting into. We also want you to know how your solution fits into the wider healthcare delivery landscape. And so we've had to balance those competing interests to make sure it's as open and as attractive as possible to all of you.
By the way, if anybody has questions, please type them into the Q&A. We've got one from Carl here, and we'll get to yours, Carl, as soon as Jaison's done going through this.
Well, at this point, I don't want to eat up too much of our bandwidth. A lot of what we're here to do is to learn from those that are kind of participating in this. And so I'm going to pass the baton back over to Nori, and then we can start answering questions if that's okay.
Sure. Jaison, we do have, well, and actually this is and I want to ask Bill a question too, but from Carl, he said, can we assume that we'll have access to clinicians with expertise in IPF if we win one of the prizes? I will tell you that although in the prize pool, it is about the money, and we're giving $1 million away, 3 prizes of $333,000 each. Yes, we have a network of clinicians that we can introduce you to, that you can talk to, and that you'll be able to have conversations with. We don't want this just to be about dollars and cents and we step away. That's not the point of this. The point of this is we have people that we can introduce you to, and we will absolutely have that available to you. Bill, do you have anything you want to add to what Jaison said, and kind of as a patient's perspective, and you're a judge as well, but from the patient's perspective, you've talked to all of the warriors. What do you hope to see broadly, not specific answers, but broadly, what do you hope to see over the next couple of weeks?
Well, just off the top of my head, Elizabeth, as you look at the patient community, I think there's 2 problems that are facing the people in this room or people watching this. One problem is it's not a homogeneous population. It's a population with extremes on both ends. And the way I look at it very simplistically, if you take that one extreme of people that are doing very well, which is maybe 10%, to the other extreme of people doing very poorly, 10% roughly, there's this big broad middle of the 80%. And I think what most patients that I talk to are hoping for are solutions based on their needs, and their needs are each different. So what's coming out of this, what I've heard so far, and Jaison, this is the first time I've heard you speak, and as I was awed by the background and the preparation that went into this. I speak for patients aggregately across the world. We are all literally quivering with hope and expectation, because as a patient, hope is big and it's important, and this is giving us more hope than anything I can think of outside of finding that silver bullet of a cure.
Jaison, really quickly, we have another question. And also, if you could, Nuri says if you can hand the screen back, that would be great. if you can
Sure.
do that, that'd be super. But the other question is, I have someone who's working on the Catalyst submission and have a question on the application for the Your Project Plan. All of the other sections have a word limit, which is really helpful. We can't find one for this section. Was that by design?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. Someone is working on the application under Your Project Plan, and they said all of the other sections have a word limit, which is very helpful, but we can't find one for this section. Any suggestions? Was that by design, that the project plan wouldn't have a word limit?
So there's a couple notes here. First of all, the Your Project Plan section of the application is actually a chart. And so you're able to fill out the chart and offer a minimum, a maximum 150 word of clarifying comments. But the chart itself, you need to access from the back end of the system. And so you'll see that you're asked to put in individual tasks in chronological order with a task start date, a task end date, and a total task duration. And so this isn't a narrative response question. This is a question that actually requires you to complete a prescribed format.
Okay, got it. We had a question about, broadly speaking, this is from someone, for engineering teams, would you prioritize spending the money on animal studies or pilot human studies, or, and I think that's an interesting question, for engineering teams, where would the priority of the money go? And I think that's what we want them to come up with, but I want to ask you that, Jaison.
Yeah, I mean, this is all about feasibility, right? One of the things we know is that if you're trying to take a new product to market, there are severe regulatory hurdles. Isn't going to get you through the FDA. And so you need to prioritize your project so that it looks like you're doing two things. One is that you're offering the most feasible plan to get as far as you can in that process if there are regulatory issues that are required, right? But second, you're showing projected impact for those funds that will be spent. So what we don't want to see is you putting all of those resources into the preliminary stages of a trial. We want to see you start to talk about how you're measuring as you go and starting to assess the metric of your impact.
So we have another question about someone who said, our expertise is on the innovation side. Can we plan to lean on you for patient access distribution of our solution? Or should we put a tentative partnership in place? You know, I think that's an interesting question, because we're more interested in, can we find these great ideas, but feasibility is part of it. Let me say again, we have access to a lot of these assets, whether it be through Bill Vick's group or other groups. We can help do that, but you need to think about that as you're putting your solution into place. Jaison, do you want to expound on that?
Yeah, you know, I would just say we're open to very early stage ideas. This competition was specifically designed for that. And, you know, as you're putting out your claims, right, that this is going to have a certain impact on patients, we do want to see some data to substantiate that claim. So that can come in the form of you've already met and you're maybe already working with patients, but that can also come from peer-reviewed journals and research and validation that you might find from third-party resources. So you get to pick your pathway, but you need to make your best argument for why impact on quality of life for IPF patients.
Yeah, I mean, as we talked about this, you know, and we Jaison, you mentioned this, and Bill, you know, you and I've talked about this a great deal. We started this competition. We really struggled with trying to make it broad enough that we could get early stage ideas, but narrow enough that we could actually make them feasible and viable. And quality of life is such a huge issue in this disease state. And Bill, I know you can discuss that, from the fact of lack of education or consistent education and oxygen issues and travel issues. Do you want to address that, Bill? Talk a little bit about the quality of life that you as a patient and the patients that you're dealing with through PF Warriors that you deal with every day.
I'm happy to. Elizabeth, I have to go back to my original statement that this is a landscape that has a lot of peaks, valleys, bumps, and it's different. It's not flat and even. And I'd hate to see someone make the mistake of thinking one solution is a solution for all. It's unfortunately not. Patients go through a variety of, what can I call them, opportunities. You know, oxygen is one of the big ones. And I personally have only been addressing that myself over the last 6 months. Until that point in time, for almost 6 years, I was running 5Ks and swimming my 2,000 yards a day and all that stuff. All of a sudden, that came to a screaming halt, and I had to learn a lot about oxygen. And so one of my hot buttons as a patient is oxygen. Other patients have different hot buttons. It's diagnosis, it's support, it's exercise, it's all these issues. I don't think there's one answer to answer your question, Elizabeth.
Yeah, and Bill, you're a little bit of an anomaly as a patient. You were in incredible shape before you were diagnosed. And for those who were on our previous webinars, you were diagnosed because your swimming times kept decreasing and you're so competitive that you were annoyed.
That's right.
So you weren't even diagnosed the typical way with a typical patient. For those who are new to the disease state and on the innovation side, we shouldn't just skip over the fact that some of the basics of this disease. The average diagnosis is 26 months. And it's a diagnosis of elimination. You're diagnosed with pneumonia or coughing or asthma or anything else before you finally get this diagnosis. And that's unconscionable because by the time 26 months goes by, a lot of damage is done to your lung. A lot of the scar tissue and the fibrosis part is creating havoc in the lung. I think that's one of the big issues that we've talked about. Bill, to your point with oxygen, and those of you who have been on these webinars, probably if you had a nickel for every time I said this, would be very wealthy, but it's unconscionable to me that I can start my car from my cell phone, but I have to get up if I'm on oxygen and walk to the other room and turn up the oxygen tank and turn it down, and that I can't tell if the oxygen's even flowing. There are engineering-based solutions that I know people who are watching this webinar right now are on the innovation side saying, I can fix that. We're looking for those. From an education standpoint, there isn't consistent education for palliative care, for just even education of the disease state. And there's bits and pieces, and as Bill calls it, Dr. Google scares the heck out of people when they first get diagnosed with this disease, as it did you, right, Bill?
Yes. Yeah, it's really a convoluted puzzle with a lot of opportunities for solutions. And we scratch our heads in the patient community every day, like, why can't we have that or do this, or can't some bright person come up with this? There's thousands. If I was 30 years younger, perhaps, I would be beating a door to the challenge to come up with solutions because they're obvious. Just talk to the patient community. And I will offer this to this group, Elizabeth. I'll make myself available as needed. I can't really spell out what you're doing, but I can really spell out the patients and put people in contact with patients and give some answers and demands and what they need.
Jaison, we have a question from Irene who asks, I understand you'd like to receive big ideas. Are you also interested in receiving smaller projects which are still impactful?
Absolutely. I mean, what's a big idea? I think that, if it's 10%, inspiration, 90% perspiration, that's probably what we're looking for more than anything. I mean, we want to see something that's going to be impactful. But these other standards like feasibility, sustainability, integration, that's what we've embedded into our rubric. And so definitely, try and propose something that will have a meaningful impact, but look at how you're going to execute that. We've have some other prescriptions in the application. You're going to have to pick a solution category. We've identified 4 major themes, as well as kind of an other catch-all, which will allow you to come to the table with pretty much anything of any size. But we've tried to take the research that was done early on in this process from OpenIDEO and some of our other partners who interviewed patients, and to try to kind of like seed some concepts that you can play with. So whether you're going upscale or downscale from what we've put out there, we want to see impact. We want to see something that we think is going to be meaningful. And sometimes small ideas are what get us there.
We had a lot of debate over that, whether we kept that other category in or we took that other category out. And I think we all went back and forth on, should we be more prescriptive? And I think we all felt that there are ideas that, sometimes we get limited by what we know. And there are ideas that people will have that we never would have thought of, even in a category that we never would have thought of. And so we decided in the end to put that in. And who knows? I mean, I agree with you. What's a big idea versus what's a small idea? And we want them all. We want all the ideas. And, somebody asked me about, the IP question, right? So who owns the IP and how does that work? And I'm going to let you address that legally. And then I'm going to come back and address that from the Three Lakes side so that I can be very, very clear on what our intent was with this. But can we address that really quickly, Jaison?
Sure. So, we have 2 areas where you can read kind of the actual rules and the terms and conditions. First, there's a dedicated page that addresses this. And second, as you get into the kind of finer print, at the foot of each of these web pages, you'll find a connection to the rampant terms and conditions. On the rules page, it actually appears at the top. But as you read through those, realize a couple things. One is that we're not trying to capture information in the early stage of this process, which could be patentable or copywritten by you. There's nothing in the application that says, show us your source code or your blueprint or your breadboard concept. These are all general questions to get to the traits that we need to assess you with in our rubric. We want you to keep your intellectual property as part of this, right? So at the end of the day, if you were to receive a grant in the form of a prize here, you would then be required to marshal out the proposal you have in your application. But you get to maintain your IP. We want to see you inspired to take that IP and to scale it out and to do as much with it as possible. We believe that by supporting our winners and by supporting everyone really, that you're going to know the best pathway for making that reach the most number of patients. Now, what we have included in here is certain rights that allows Three Lakes Partners to publish the information contained in your application. But please know, and we've said this, that the reason we've required that is because we want not just the 3 winners who come out of this first round to get access to capital and to get exposure. We really want all of the ideas to get exposure. And so by allowing us to say publish or republish the video pitches and the short form descriptions of your ideas, we want to share that with other funders. We want other people to be aware of the full scope of everything that we're able to capture in this process and to make it value added for everyone.
But it is not about, and to your point, I want to reiterate that, it's not about us owning your IP. That's not what this is about. And on a broader scale, people ask all the time what Three Lakes is. And lately I've come up with the phrase that we're unusually unusual, because we are. We're a venture philanthropy. So what does that mean exactly? And is the philanthropy part just to make it feel good so we can make a ton of money? Let me be very clear, and I've said this a zillion times. We are not judged on a return on our investment. We are not judged that way, and we're not judged on a return on our brand. We're judged on what can we do to improve patient quality of life, and what can we do in other senses outside of this challenge to bring new therapeutics to market to help the best ideas cross that, that bridge sometimes that falls off in medical science. How can we help motivate diagnostics and earlier diagnostics and better prognosis for this disease? So we're really, and I know this sounds cliche, but we are the honest broker on this. So it's not about us stealing your IP and running with it. That's not what this is about. So if you have that fear, put it aside. If we see more than 3 ideas that we love, who knows what we may or may not do. So I'm gonna put that out there publicly because, Jason, we've talked about that before. We might see 5 ideas, and you know what? We can do something with that if that's the case. But the 3 prizes are $333,000 prizes. We have some more questions here really quickly. At the end, Bill, we're going to have you give, if you're okay with it, we're going to have you give your email because there's people asking how to email you. So
Sure,
I know you are because you contact everybody.
And my phone number.
Yeah, we'll do that. Jason, really quickly, I don't know if you know this, but we got some really great responses. Bill put out posts to his 60,000 connections every week, but he's involved in a medical device group. And Bill, do you remember the headline that they put out in that blog post? You should tell Jason this.
It was embarrassingly bad. Jason, the headline, which I cringe to even say it, and somebody wrote it. The headline, which got a lot of attention. Bill Vick is dying. Oh. What a terrible headline. But it got a lot of eyeballs, a lot of attention. And this group on LinkedIn has 354,000 members. All 354,000 members are intimately aware of the challenge and the opportunity within the PF community.
Well, Bill, I think that speaks more to people's admiration for you, right?
Yeah.
On the website and elsewhere is really to capture some of those stories. So, those that are looking at the screen now, you'll see we have IPF Patient Voices available. We really want kind of the heart of this competition to be about patient quality of life. And so to understand what those people are suffering from every day, whether you're an engineer working on an oxygen delivery system, or whether you're a caretaker at the heart of care working on the continuum of those services, we want you to start thinking about the patients first. I think too often in biotech and pharmaceuticals, the patient comes last, right? And so this is really all about that. And if Bill Vick embodies that, which I believe he does, that's even better.
Yeah, agreed completely. If you have questions, please, there's no dumb questions. This is your chance to ask the expert, Jason, any question you might have about this application process, about the judging, about the scoring, about anything. So please feel free to type them in on the Q&A. We have one from Joshua who says, what would be a more exciting prospect to the challenge? A revolutionary but risky idea, or a simple engineering solution to a basic problem that we can easily realize Can we submit multiple concepts? So there's two questions there, Jaison. I'll let you have the first one first. Do you want a big old revolutionary risky idea or the simple engineering solution?
Well, let's be, we want the thing that's going to have the most impact. Now, how do you look at what's going to have the most impact within this landscape of healthcare, biotechnology, pharmaceuticals? It's a heavily regulated industry. And so when you look at what can actually get into market, what can be commercialized, we really need to take a firm look at feasibility, sustainability, and integration. At the end of the day, we've got Bill on the phone. We want something that Bill can use in the short term. This is a horrible disease, and people are literally gasping for their last breath. So we want things that can get to market quickly. We want things that are going to be able to affect quality of life as quickly as possible. And that was the thinking when we originally formulated some of these categorical descriptions. So it doesn't mean that I don't think those are mutually exclusive categories. I really don't. And I think sometimes the thing that's tried and tested can be innovative in its configuration or reconfiguration.
Yeah, a different delivery methodology, something like that. Absolutely, I completely agree with you. Can we submit multiple concepts? The answer is, I think, yes, right?
Well, there's a technicality here. And so what we don't want is to get bad ideas. We really want you to focus
Jaison,
in on
you broke up there. You broke up there. So say that again. There's a technicality here. So say that again.
Well, so what we really want is each team to submit their best submission. We don't want a team to submit 20 bad ideas. We'd rather you focused your attention and your time on the best submission that you can offer. In terms of how you register and participate, it is the case that a single registrant is only allowed to submit one application. And so that's an important distinction. So if you, in fact, want to be part of multiple teams, either as a partner or as an informal kind of like advisor or whatever capacity you may be in as an individual, you have the option to join multiple teams. But for every registrant, we want you submitting one application, and that needs to be your best application.
Okay. So we have a question from Rafi, and I'll try to, this is a little medical, little scientific on this, but how much of a challenge is efficient pulmonary delivery in IPF patients? IPF patients have scar tissue that prevents efficient oxygen exchange in the lungs. That makes us wonder how that affects absorption of other medications that are delivered to the lungs and whether this is a challenge in the IPF community. Bill, do you have any sense of that? I mean, I guess that's probably, and we can follow up with an answer to that. My gut is clearly that's a problem.
It's a problem. I'm not sure. I'm really a pragmatic guy, and I've learned in this whole challenge that I'm not always the brightest leaf in the tree, So I don't really have an answer for that. I would think, obviously, sure, as an engineering friend of mine would say, it's intuitively obvious that there's problems like that. But I don't think that's on the top of mind share for most patients.
So, Jaison, if for people who are still filling out the applications, and again, you can see behind my head here when those are due, completed applications on November 8th. But for those people, what's the one single, somebody could say to you, you got one piece of advice to give them. I mean, can you come up with, what's the one biggest piece of advice you would give people who are still trying to get through this application?
Sure. I would say I have a young daughter, and we've been learning a lot about the college application process. And it used to be well-rounded. And now it's about being sharp, right? And I would say if we're looking at those two options, do we want a well-rounded idea or do we want a sharp pencil? Let's get specific. Let's get something that's as sharp and as sharp as possible, something that focuses and something that offers a very tangible solution that an ordinary person can understand, but that has all of those claims validated either through peer research or prior work that you've already done, or if this is the last mile to get your product to market, we want to understand that better. And so, yes, be specific. If you reverse engineer this process and you spend time on that trait scoring rubric, you'll see that it's heavily weighted towards those things that are feasible, that are verifiable, that are sustainable, that are integrated. And so you're going to be competing against a lot of other teams, and we want to make sure that you're distinguishing yourself on how practical and how implementable your concept is.
And impactful. I mean, you said that. I mean, Bill Vick would say, I want something that I can see in my lifetime and put to use for all these patients that I see all the time. I mean, I know we're all hopeful. I mean, and I hope is not a strategy, right? But we're beyond hopeful. We're just believing that something's going to come from this that will be impactful for these patients and that we can get into practice right away. And Bill, I know that's what you've talked about through this whole challenge, that you just can't wait to get your hands on some of these to judge them because you're so excited about the possibilities. So there. We have another question. Alex said, I've registered, but I can't see where to submit my application. Jaison, can you show him where that is?
Yeah, once you've registered, you need to log back into the competition, right? And you need to make sure that you are populating your profile and you're completing your application. Now, if you'll notice, I'm still on screen share. So thanks, Nori, for letting me kind of control the screen here. But there's two different websites. The first is a website you'll see here, which is ipfcatalyst.com. Later, you'll see that you can sign up for more information. This is not program registration. This is not program registration. As you get to our other website right here, right, then you're into the website and you have 1 day to register. So once you've registered and you've completed all this information, you've accepted the terms and conditions, what happens is you then receive an email that asks you to revisit the site and then to complete the second step of the registration process. Once you've done that, you will enter the back end of the system. Now, once you're in the back end of the system, you have the option to see exactly what your timeline is. You can actually start to see the progress you're making towards completing your application. It's really important that everyone understands that this process is in fact both described on the front end, but realized on the back end.
Hopefully that answers the question. Bruce asks, if early detection processes find diagnosis of other pulmonary diseases, is this a problem? And I'm going to say no, it's not a problem, because the sooner, if you can find those diseases sooner and you get to the solution with IPF sooner, that's an advancement in the disease. So from my perspective, I don't think it's a problem. Bill, do you want to address that at all?
I don't see any problem at all with what you're discussing, Elizabeth. So far everything has been, I think, pretty clear and straightforward.
So,
hey, Elizabeth, this is Jaison. I just want to emphasize something, because the last question kind of threw me. I think it threw me because the person who asked it maybe hasn't completed registration.
Yeah,
so what you can see on the screen here is you can actually see the back end of our system. This is what happens once you've registered. Now, I'm an admin, so this looks slightly different than what a competitor might see, only in very minor form. But
we lost you a little bit, Jaison.
in our discussion forums and having conversations and getting their questions answered, you'll notice that there's 0% complete for me for my application, because I'm in fact an admin. I won't be submitting an application in this round. But should I access that application module, you can see exactly how this works, right? So this is me completing an application in real time as we speak, right? And you can notice that as I'm uploading or as I'm responding to different prompts and questions, right, that you'll see there's this kind of user interface which appears, which allows me to do any number of things to respond to the required questions. You have drop downs, you have form fields, you have narrative responses, and later you have charts and graphs that you need to fill out. And so these are really important, right? Because once you've done this, you get back to a situation in which you can revisit your dashboard and you can see exactly how far you are in completing your application. So it's a very intuitive back-end system. With the work that I just did, I'm technically 14% complete in my application, but you can tell that's nonsensical gibberish. So make sure you're not just looking at completing the requirements, but you're looking at the qualitative aspects of your application.
So to that, we had another question about that. If it was not clear, this Troy asks, it was not clear to me, can we enter information in the application page and then go back and edit it before we submit it?
You absolutely can. I mean, as head on the whiteboard, November 8th at 5 p.m. Central Time, that is the deadline for submitting your applications. You can make changes right up until that deadline, right? And so we don't have any problem with that. I would say, let me jump back into the application real quick. There are multiple ways to get there. You can even view your application as a PDF as you're going through this. This application has an auto-save function. So just like most things, most application forms on the internet, you can see exactly when your last copy was saved in this black box that appears in the upper right-hand corner. Now you'll notice that that was just minutes ago for me. But if I were to add to this, you can see if I'm going to add more gibberish here, you can see it's updated. So you know exactly when the last save occurred. So we often find that people want to make last minute changes. I encourage you, please to make sure you've got your complete copy well before the submission deadline. If you revisit this at the last minute and your internet connection goes down, if you've been working on this in a Word document and now you're in the last throes and you want to cut and paste from a Word document, you could find any number of technical problems you might have on your own laptop or desktop computer. And so please don't wait. Please get your best submission as quickly as possible. We know people tend not to do their homework till the last minute, but please begin this process today or as soon as you can.
So we have about 19 minutes left in this webinar, and we've got a couple more questions here. And please, if you have any questions, this is your shot. So please ask them. Again, we'll be available after this, and you can ask. There are things online where you can post questions as well, but we're right here live right now. So please ask Jaison while he's here. Jaison, we had a question about how many registered for it. I have the latest numbers. Is that something we're okay to share? I'm okay to share it, but I don't know what you think.
Well, I would just say this, this competition's been really interesting for us because we have people like the IPF warriors that have registered that are not necessarily going to submit an application. So if we're going to reveal that number, which we don't always do, just know that that's not necessarily indicative of the total gross number of competitors you're up against if you're in the midst of completing an application. We won't know that number until November 8th at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. So it's fine to tell them, but this doesn't necessarily indicate that your chances have gone up or down based on those people that are actively logged into the site.
Yeah, so I will say this. We've had 69 applications started. We had 252 people registered, 9 more from yesterday. We had 69 applications started. So, and we have about 4 completed. So right now, 4 people are, they aren't like you and me and Bill Vick, Jaison. They didn't wait till the last minute, they're done. Which is great, but there are 69 that have been started and quite a few that are at 50%. So that's great news. But again, I think to your point, I don't want people to not get involved because they're worried they're not going to win. I'm hoping that they are confident in their solutions and confident in their ideas, that they still realize that this is an important application to fill out and they have till November 8th to do that.
Yeah, and let me just say this, we design these competitions because we specifically focus on providing value to the teams or the individuals that are going to play and not win. The only way we're able to thrive as a software company is to you're going to get normalized scores and comments from those highly credible judges is because we want you to walk away from this feeling inspired. We want you to feel like this is the starting point for your team. Now you're aware of what IPF is. Now you've got a solution. Now you've got feedback on that solution, and you can then take that to the next stage. And often we find in these competitions, it's not about the winners. It's about the whole community. And it's trying to make sure that those people that maybe scored in the middle of this stack have enough feedback, they've got enough information that they can go on to take their proposal to the next step, even without us if necessary.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really glad you said that because I addressed this earlier kind of broadly, but we're looking for great ideas. 3 people will win this challenge, but Three Lakes isn't done. We're not done trying to make advances in this disease. So I want people to, if they feel confident that they have something that can make a difference in these patients' lives, the 3 winners who are going to win the $333,000 each, that's great. But we want to see the ideas that are out there because we're not done. This isn't just a one-time thing for Three Lakes. And Bill, I know you know our commitment, and Jaison, I know you know our commitment. We're here for the long haul, and we're here for these patients. And as I mentioned early on, we're going to be judged as an organization on whether or not we made a difference in patient lives. And that is the bottom line. And so if there's an idea that maybe didn't win because the team hadn't been put together enough yet or whatever, but it had enough interest from us to go, hey, we need to come talk to you about this. Tell us more about this. This isn't just a one shot for us. And Jaison or Bill, do you want to jump in on that a little bit?
Personally, you and I have had that discussion before, as I've had with other Three Lakes partners, and it is a long haul process. One of the things we see as patients, and the reality is, we're going to be planting trees where we'll never sit underneath the shade. We recognize that, many of us, but there's a legacy value here. And I can tell you, everyone in this room or anybody listening to this, patients collectively want you all to win. We like every single entrant to be a winner because it helps us. It gives us hope and solutions. And those are the two biggies for me, hope and solutions.
Jaison, we have another question here from Valerie. We plan to offer a line of oxygen safety products that work and communicate together. Can we include them in one application?
Yeah, you can. I mean, we often see this in our more technical competitions where there is an array of products and services. But if you're offering that array, just be careful in terms of how much you're biting off for this cash award. We're talking about $350,000, right? And so how far can you take that? If it's modular, if there are features to that solution set which can be implemented in stages, try and carve out the thing that's going to have impact, but that's going to be feasible within the budget that we've provided.
We have a question from Joshua who says, can we show some work, prototypes, and other things in our pitch, or would you recommend just talking to the camera for 90 seconds?
So this is a great question because it brings up another topic as well. Whenever we introduce the idea of video content into an application, there is this presumption that the video that's better produced, the video where you have a production budget, where it's kind of shiny and sparkly and attention grabbing, is the one that's going to score higher. Actually, what we've found in our research, and we run these competitions all over the world, is that it's usually the video that has the most authentic voice that's going to score the highest. So what I mean by authentic is it's usually one or two people looking into a camera and speaking sincerely and with data to validate their claims about the intended impact of their solution. And so while it's great to have multiple voices that are punctuating or reinforcing any of those claims, usually it's sincerity that wins the day, authenticity that wins the day. Now, if you're giving us your authentic video or your authentic proposal, and it's important, the technology or the technical approach that you may be offering, please don't hesitate from doing that. We welcome that. And what I would say is that what we really want to look at is kind of people's broader understanding of these technologies. When you look at our judges, you'll notice that some of these are more or less technical than others, right? Some of those people are going to have a better understanding of the technical aspects of your solutions and some aren't. When we receive your complete application, we're going to conduct an administrative review to make sure it meets all the requirements. And then there's going to be a random distribution out to our judging pool. So you may be assessed by a judge who doesn't understand your core technology, but who would understand the application of that core technology. So don't be too generalistic, but also realize at the end of the day, you're not talking to a highly specialized judge necessarily.
Yeah, and I think, when you think about it, they have the prototypes and they have work, that just shows that it's even further along. So, if it were my application, I would probably say, yeah, that's great. Use that.
Yeah.
Gary asks, are reviewers interested in receiving proposals to develop quality measures based on existing IPF clinical practice guidelines? So the answer is yes. I mean, we want all different types of proposals. And I think the inference in that is, and Bill can address this way better than I can, but the IPF clinical practice guidelines right now are somewhat limited because of the lack of effort and money in this disease state. So maybe they're too narrow, but the fact of the matter is proposals to develop quality measures based on what's there right now, if that makes it better quality of life, if we can figure out how to understand the patient, the PROMs better for patients through those practice guidelines, I would say absolutely we should look for those. Bill, would you agree?
Yeah, well, I think that's a great question, by the way, and I think it's pertinent because people sometimes forget that before we were patients, we were people, and we still are, and we think and we analyze, and many patients are on par with their pulmonologists as far as knowledge about the disease, clinical trials, and the nuances of cell distribution. I mean, so it's answer that question. Absolutely, give us all we can get.
Bill, have you talked to some of the patients in the PF Warrior group about the contest and what's the sense or what's the dialogue and how's that dialogue been going? We've got about 10 minutes left, by the way, so if you have questions, please post those to us now. But Bill, back to you on the PF Warriors group. What's that? What's the dialogue been?
Two different kinds of dialogue. One is kind of face to face, belly to belly. In going around the country and meeting with patient groups and talking to patients on a regular basis, I'm going to call it the real world, you get certain whack of questions is a better way to describe it. Online, however, people kind of are a little more relaxed and open, and you get some very penetrating, great questions. Overall, I think patients and their caregivers universally are excited about coming up with those two things I mentioned, solutions and hope. Give us solutions and hope. We'll love you forever.
We have a question from Joshua. We're based in the UK, and most of our contact and discussions have been with the NHS, the National Health Service over there. Does that matter? Do you want more input from the US healthcare system? Obviously, we want our solutions to help patients internationally. I can answer that a little bit. First of all, the disease, to Bill's point, is not the same. It's heterogeneous no matter where you are. So it's heterogeneous in the United States, it's heterogeneous in the UK, but a lot of what the patients are facing are very similar. So the length of diagnosis in the UK, they have even bigger issues as it relates to when they can get put on therapies. They have to have a forced vital capacity of under 80%, which is very difficult for patients. So I don't think it matters to us where you're getting the information because it's probably going to be very similar to what we face here. If you need more input from the US, Bill Vick's your guy to help you get that. If you want to talk to some US-based patients, and Bill, I think you're okay with me saying that. But from my perspective, I've been to the UK. We've been to a lot of the places in the UK, the Royal Brompton, who's doing amazing work, Southampton, who's doing a lot with acoustics and digital stethoscopes. So I know what's happening over there. And I know from the patient perspective, we've met with some patients. Their experience of long time to be diagnosed, frustrated with the lack of oxygen issues. They don't have pulmonary rehab in the UK like we do here. So a lot of the issues are very similar that the patients face. And Bill, I know you have a lot of friends outside of the US who have the disease. Can you address that at all?
I talk to many patients and doctors, consultants in the UK. My philosophy, very simply, is PF is a disease without borders. I don't care if you're in Japan, the UK, Dallas, Texas, or Berlin. It's the same disease with the same problems and the same opportunities for solutions. Maybe the nuances of the laws, the culture may be different, and they are, but the disease is still the same. So what you're creating in the UK, we're going to gobble it up if it works here.
We have a question from Rafi. Are there any known IPF biomarkers? That's a great question. And we're trying to get to the bottom of that with some other projects that we're working on. Right now, in order for IPF to be diagnosed, it has to be diagnosed by an HRCT, so a high-res CT scan. And so what they do is they look for fibrosis in the epithelial cells in the lower part of the lung. And so from the perspective of diagnosis right now, that's one of the areas that you can look at. As it relates to quality measures, it's a 6-minute walk test and forced vital capacity. So what's the forced vital capacity of a patient and how can they breathe? But there's so much more work that needs to be done in the biomarker space, from a genetic biomarker and microbiome biomarker. There's so much more work that needs to be done there. And I know that's something that Bill is involved in as well. We're trying to get better biomarkers for this disease. You want to address any of that?
There's companies that I've kind of come in contact with that are exploring that space. There's some really exciting things on the horizon. I would hope anybody sitting in this room, this virtual room we're on, but have that open perspective to look beyond what's in front of their nose, because there's just huge windows of opportunities because the problems aren't being addressed or solved, talked about, or sometimes even known. One of the things that's interesting, Elizabeth, that I've seen is few companies out there in this space really talk to the customer, the patient. And we have a lot of things, insights we're happy to share with people because it's in our own best interest. If we can live another day, that's a big deal. Well, there's people in this room that can probably help us live a day or more and live a lot more comfortably, and hopefully prevent our families from becoming victims of this. I call it a ninja killer, because once you're diagnosed, you're already on your way to dying. And so I think that, to answer the point of points, plural, all the things we're talking about, I think is right now is the right place, the right time for the right solutions. And all the things that have been discussed so far, I think Josh was asked probably half the questions as I kind of interpret it, which is fine. But he's hitting it on the head. It's not a UK disease. It's not a US disease. It's not a Japanese disease. It's a disease in the world. And the solutions that you have here are everywhere.
The biomarker things are hard too because of the heterogeneity of the disease, right? So yes, sure. Is there a genetic predisposition? We believe that there is familial IPF, which was very well documented, which has something to do with short telomeres or telomerase, depending on if you're in the US or the UK. But also there is sporadic IPF, people who have never had it in their family. So biomarkers are difficult, other than right now, HRCTs showing that scar tissue. Bill, and really quickly, you talked about different solutions. On the videos that Jaison has up there right now from the Patient Voices, if you've not seen those were done by our friends at IDEO. And IDEO went around the country and went and talked to patients all over, and came to Dallas and talked to a lot of the patients in your group and the PF Warriors, went to their homes, drove in their cars with them, went to lunch with them. They talked to a man whose wife loved to shop, but she couldn't because she was on oxygen that couldn't be, they couldn't refill the tanks, the liquid oxygen. And he literally took out the back seat of his car and put the liquid oxygen tank in there and traveled with it, which to me is somewhat like a missile. But they're doing things, life hack things that they shouldn't have to do with this disease. And so part of doing this challenge was hoping that we could get better solutions like that. So Bill, can you give your contact info, your email, so that people can email you and drop you a note so that Absolutely. If they have any questions after this?
Sure. Email is real easy. It's bill@pfwarrior, singular, pfwarrior.com. My phone, and I welcome phone calls. I'm in Dallas. My number is 972-612-8425. Our webpage for the Warriors is on Facebook. It's a Facebook page. It's at facebook.com/PF Warrior. We also have other groups that are private groups for patients and caregivers, but that's a public group. It's an easy way to access members. If you post something and it's pertinent to the membership at large or the PF community, I'll make sure it's seen.
And Bill, you mentioned the group with the 350,000 members. That's the medical device group on LinkedIn, right?
That is correct. Joe Hagi runs that group, and he's got a heart as big as his group. He's really been supportive.
Well, there's no one with a bigger heart than you. So I appreciate so much you being here today, Bill, and giving the patient perspective on this. And you're going to have your work cut out for you as people fill out these applications. Jaison, can you give us a kind of a final, we got a couple minutes left. I want to give you a shot to bring this thing around and to encourage people to fill out these applications.
It's a call to action. I think too often we have people that try and address causes, right? And they're giving you general kind of inspiration, right? Which is, we need to do this, this competition is about how we're going to do that. This competition offers specifics. It offers you a voice. It gives you a place at the table. And we've tried to be as kind of open as we can. But at the end of the day, there are very specific tasks that you have to complete. And I encourage you to become familiar with those and to begin to grapple with them. You have to complete, if you haven't registered, you need to register by tomorrow at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time to begin the process. This competition has been up for 12 weeks, and we need you to get into the queue. And then you've got 2 weeks and 1 day to complete that application. So by November 8th at 5 p.m., that's when you have to submit your best idea. So please.
Yeah, again, and let me jump in because we're going to wrap it up. We're hoping everybody does that. If you have any questions, please email us on the website, challenge.ipfcatalyst.com. Jaison Morgan, thanks for all of your expertise and your help today. Bill, thanks for everything you do. Everybody, thanks for being here. And let's make a difference in these patients' lives. Take care, everybody.
Thank you very much for watching today's webinar. We want to thank Jaison, Bill, Elizabeth, and of course, each and every one of you for your time today. If you have any questions that weren't addressed in today's event, that's okay. Email us at admin@ipfcatalyst.com. And thank you for watching.